Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Paranormal Paradigm podcast. No Ben again this week, so it's just myself, Kieran, and I'll be interviewing Les Champion, our guest. Really looking forward to this episode, actually. Les is a friend of mine, has been for a few years now on the paranormal investigative circuit. And he's got a lot of history behind him, a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, which we'll be talking about tonight. And he's going to be recording this actually sat next to me. So, hopefully you get the sense that we're kind of sat in the same room, just having a chat like friends do. Hope you guys are enjoying our podcasts. Our listening figures are ever increasing. Feedback is good. Comments are good. Followers are going up. So, we set out to do this just as a chat, really, and a way of talking to interesting people. And it's flown by, episode 14 already, and we're getting a lot of good feedback, and, it seems to be taking off. On a personal note, I am currently going around England with my new presentation, Experiences of a Paranormal Investigator. You can catch me at several places across England. On February the 17th, I am in Newmarket for East Anglia UFO Group. In April, I am at New Horizons in Lytham St Anne's, which is up near Blackpool, so nice excuse to get away for the day or two. And in May, I am at Truth Seekers North East, which is up in Newcastle, with the lovely Maureen. And there'll be more dates added throughout the year. So if you are based in England and you're around those areas, please just let me know. Drop me a message on Facebook or contact me, and it'd be nice to hook up with you and have a chat. Also, the plans to forge a conference within the Birmingham area, an all-day conference, are well and truly underway. At the time of recording this, tomorrow I will be going to meet Dave Hodrian, who is the chairman of BUFOG, Birmingham UFO Group, and we will be having a chat and ironing out any issues that we might have, i.e. venues where we're thinking of hiring, speakers that we're going to have come and talk. And the plan is to have a merge, really, of paranormal and UFO topics, speakers on the day. It's going to be an all-day event, so, roughly 10 till 6, 5, 6, 7 speakers or so. And, hopefully, again, if you're based in England, particularly in the West Midlands area, keep your eye out for this. I'll keep you updated on when we're looking. Probably the end of the year or early spring next year is when the event's going to happen. And I'll obviously put details on Facebook and let you know in upcoming episodes about the plans and when and where it's going to be. But I'm really excited about this because it's something I planned on doing for a long time, and now I've got Dave on board so we can bang our heads together and hopefully come up with something good. There's not really much of it in our area. There are big conferences like you have Awakening in Manchester, and other conferences, the Truth Conference, the Probe Conference, all these that are dotted around England. Nothing really that close to here that I know of anyway. And I thought it'd just be good to really, kind of set a benchmark and allow a platform for speakers to speak, but also for you guys and an audience to come and spend a Saturday listening to what will hopefully be an interesting day. Also recently, again at the time of recording, a week ago, I and Ryan, who featured on the last episode briefly as he came round and was forced into co-hosting with me, me and Ryan went along with a CE5 group. So this is Rachel and Dave. Lovely, lovely people. They recently interviewed myself on their multi-dimensional show. You can find that on Facebook if you Facebook that. Interviewing some great guests they are. It's a really good thing they've got going. And for those that don't know what CE5 is, it was pioneered really by Stephen Greer, an American guy, and it's all about meditation and tuning into frequencies to enable us to be able to see extraterrestrial, so extraterrestrial craft, extraterrestrial phenomena, Sometimes people have even claimed seeing beings themselves, so actual alien extraterrestrial beings. And we went out with these guys. We did a joint a joint investigation, a few paranormal pieces of equipment, and they had their meditation tapes and their equipment and their mindset, and we put it together. And we had a really good night. We went to a place called Cannock Chase, so that's near me, and a lot of paranormal activities linked to this place. People have claimed even seen a Bigfoot there. A lot of UFO activity, a lot of paranormal activity. There's the story of the children with, I think they've got black eyes that have been seen around there. So a hot spot for paranormal activity. And we camped out. We had some camp chairs. We spent about 4 or 5 hours there. Left just after midnight, and it was freezing, absolutely freezing. I took some Rice Krispie snacks, and they were rock solid as I was trying to eat them about 10:30, 11 o'clock, because it was that cold. When we first got there, it was very cloudy, and I wasn't really expecting much. But someone said, just keep, wishing for the clouds to clear, and they will. And lo and behold, about 11 o'clock, we looked up, and the clouds had formed like a ring around us above our heads. So there were still clouds there, but a ring had cleared in the sky, and we could see the stars so brightly. I mean, no light pollution where we were, and I've never seen stars like it. We could almost see the edge of the Milky Way, and the all of the star formations were there. And we quickly got in tune with where the flight paths were for the airplanes, so we knew what airplanes were. But we did see some interesting anomalies, some flashes in the sky that we couldn't explain. Our K2 meter was going mad in the middle of a field, and that coincided with their piece of equipment which measured electromagnetism. Every time theirs spiked, ours spiked, and vice versa. So it just showed that there was something going on. A lot of senses, a lot of feelings, and like I say, a few flashes in the sky. But for a first experience, I really enjoyed it, and I'll be certain to be hooking up with those guys again soon. And I know they're keen on coming on a paranormal investigation with us. So it's always nice to kind of cross paths with like minded people. They're in a slightly different field of investigations, but they do have the same kind of beliefs and the same system of working, and that can be applied across any investigative field really. So it's always interesting to team up with people like that. And so hopefully you're going to enjoy this interview with Les. Like I say, long time friend of mine, vast experience in the paranormal investigative field, and he's just popping over for a chat really. So thanks for joining us, and hopefully you enjoy it. And here we are with Les. Okay, so I'm here now with Les Champion, a very good friend of mine. How are you doing, Les?
Fine, thank you very much.
As I described in the intro, Les has been part of my paranormal circles for a good few years now. But he's been going for many, many years. Dare I say, before I was born?
It depends. I've been investigating since about circa 1998.
I was about
22 years.
Okay, so I was about 8 or 9. Okay. So do you want to tell us how you got into it in the 90s? What made you start investigating paranormal? Because I imagine it wasn't that big back then.
Well, no. Always interested. I can make sense now. I can look back to childhood and have a fascination with churchyards.
Okay.
And enjoyed being in graveyards. I never thought why, or never realised why. Sometimes I thought, was this weird? Was it some sort of black magic interest or no? And often found myself looking at particular graves for no particular reason. And 1997, the opportunity came around to look at joining a team, which I did. And during the course of getting involved in that team, we did some graveyard investigations. And as I understood more and more, I realised that I was able to pick up on sensitivity to spirits, sometimes child spirits.
Okay.
And then actually realising in hindsight, most of the graves I've been drawn to have been graves of children.
So when you say you're sensitive, are you picking up... I've been with you where you've picked up a name and then you've walked over to the next gravestone and it's been that name. Is that the kind of thing you get, or do you pick up on emotion? Or
mostly I get, sometimes I get a mental vision internally to my own mind. So it's like I'm watching something on a stage
Okay.
in front of me, somebody appearing. Sometimes I just get the name put in my head, and sometimes I've heard a bit of a voice.
Okay.
Not in a psychotic sort of way, but you get the idea. It's like a silent voice in your own head that you think you can make sense of what that's saying.
So how do you discern between that being a separate entity, a separate voice to the voice that's in your head? How do you know that that's not your subconscious and it is something spiritual?
I find myself questioning it.
Yeah.
At first, not immediately saying I have a spirit talking to me. I've got a gentleman in the room, as if you would in a medium session or something. But realising what is it they've said? What's the context of it? Does it fit anything I've recently been involved with? Is it part of my social circle, somebody I know? And often, if it's none of those, I start to then think, okay, what's happening? How can I find some evidence to back this up?
Okay.
For example, the most recent time of being in the churchyard, asking for some people to identify themselves to us if they were around us, getting the name in my head and finding that out of all the hundreds of graves in that churchyard, it's the gentleman that was buried next to where we were standing at that time.
Yeah, and I can testify to that, guys, because we were there together. Les came out with a name, and lo and behold, about 10 yards away, wasn't it?
Less than that. Literally stood next to this gentleman's grave.
And we hadn't seen this tombstone, we were kind of walking up the path towards it.
Yeah.
And it was just there on the right-hand side.
And half covered with leaves, so it's not something you would just pick out.
It was off the track, wasn't it? It was weird, because it was kind of buried on its own, actually. So that is something I can testify to. Okay, so you kind of got this sense that you wanted to join a team, to explore a bit more. You joined the team, and did that help you? As that helps you progress in terms of, it's been, like you say, 22 years now?
It's very much helped me in how I work today, because you join a team, lots of different ideas, some people with a more modern approach to things, and some people want to stay very much in an old-fashioned, old-school way, that's the one I've actually adopted. Yeah. But you get a feel for other bits of equipment. And I was quite new to it in 1998-99, looking at how other people are doing it and trying to decide what's right, what isn't, what appears to be accurate. Sometimes casting doubt. I came in as a bit of a skeptic as to how real is this.
Yeah.
And other times thinking, I want to believe this, but I'm not going to say to myself, this is it, just for the thrill of getting in touch with a ghost or a spirit.
Okay.
Wanting it to be probably the most real, the most accurate and explainable, or unexplainable, if you like.
Yeah.
This is a paranormal thing that we cannot experience. That's the sort of thing I found I wanted to experience through that. I got it through the team. And unfortunately, there were differences of interpretation, which sometimes made it hard to decide on what was real, what was wasn't.
So you had people where you're looking at it from not a skeptical point of view, but an investigative point of view.
Yes.
You're saying that there was a clash with people who maybe would leap to the fact that it was a ghost every time.
Yes, it had to be a spirit. It had to be a ghost, and you're thinking, it doesn't have to be.
No, and that's the hardest point for people that are just getting into this, is the understanding that you will have 4 or 5 hours on an investigation and nothing will happen, and you'll walk away feeling a bit deflated. But that's right. The way it is.
It is.
You can't be having something happening all the time, because if it was, then there'd be no doubt that spirits existed. What makes it investigative,
that's right,
is coming up empty-handed sometimes.
And not least, I think the very apparent thing that people go along expecting spirits to come out on command.
Yeah.
When in fact, it's important that we go out and we look, and if we're going to contact spirits, consider that it's up to them if they want to come and talk to us.
Yeah.
These were living people once, living, breathing beings, and we should be as polite to them in death as we would have been in life.
But that's quite a selfish approach that these kind of people have, because it's almost like, I'm here, I've paid £60. I could be in the pub watching the football, but I've chose to come here, so you should be coming out and talking to me now.
Yeah.
And it's this kind of selfish attitude that they deserve to have this connection with a spirit or a ghost, and it's not always the way.
No, and looking back at my childhood when I read all the books and went interested in going through the graveyards and got drawn to these graves and wondering then, it's a bit scary all this. Now I'm in adulthood and over the last 20 years I've done investigations and wanting to explain what happened in my feelings back then as a child, how I'm interpreting them differently as an adult.
Yeah.
But also to find out how real this paranormal world is, what's beyond the other side.
Okay.
And to reinforce in my own feeling of achievement is trying to find at least one thing that will prove to me, or not prove to me, that heighten my acceptance that yes, there really is something to the paranormal.
Yeah.
My personal goal being to achieve a real EVP to try and that demonstrates an intelligent entity that's able to communicate with us in real time.
Okay, so it's interesting your choice of words there, how you said to heighten your acceptance and not prove, because something I'm discussing quite a lot lately is, can we ever trust the future of paranormal investigating? Can we ever trust evidence again? Because what you believe is evidence, someone will call it Photoshop. Someone will say it was fake because they weren't there. Yeah. So it is a very personal thing, and I don't think we can ever truly know if it's real or not.
No, it can be proven, neither proven nor disproven.
Yeah.
And that's the excitement of it to me almost. And it's also important, therefore, that we're true to ourselves and to our fellow team colleagues, and indeed, if we're holding an event, to our guests.
Yeah.
We need to try and look for evidence. We hear what we believe may be phenomena, but we don't say what it is. We won't describe what we think it might be, what the potential causes are, or whether it's just a natural phenomenon, but being true and honest to ourselves. And indeed, if one jumps to the conclusion that give us a sound if you're there and a knock, oh my God, it's a ghost. Well, that's fooling yourselves. It's unreal.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, sometimes it's just lucky that the pipe happened to make a banging noise as you've asked for a knock in response. Now, we have been on investigations, though, one being down in Drakelow Tunnels, where we were asking for whistles and we were getting whistles on command in reply to our whistles. And that was very interesting. It was very interesting. Again, we don't know. We never saw a spirit standing there whistling, so we don't know. But it was interesting. But you're right. You always have to rule out what it could possibly be. And even then, it still might not be a ghost.
Yeah. And the importance, of course, of pre-investigation checks all the way through a building to see what will creak, what doesn't. If you walk up on a certain number of floorboards, what noise are they going to make? So that when you come to the turning all the lights out, what's that going to do? Is it going to likely to go off again? And I come to a recollection of investigation did in Shrewsbury at an old hotel with a very, very creaky stairway leading into it. The slightest movement would make the stairs creak. But there were 4 of us on that investigation. In the dead of night, we checked all through the floor so that we knew if anybody was on that staircase, it was going to creak.
Yeah.
No question about it. We were all sat at a small table in the middle of that ballroom, big echoey room. And the only other person up and about at that night in the hotel was the night watchman.
Right.
And we were calling out, can you repeat this noise, complete this whistle with a wolf whistle? And we got one back after about 10 minutes of trying.
Yeah.
We were all taken aback. Nobody was in and around the staircase because as soon as that happened, we went and a couple went down the staircase just to make sure the night watchman wasn't playing games with us.
Yeah.
And he was in his office at the far end of the hotel. Couldn't have heard what we were saying and what we were asking to happen. Unexplainable.
But again, you say that you had 10 minutes of trying. Now, the problem is in this day and age is most people that come on our investigations have very little attention span. And that's down to things such as smartphones and TVs and things like that. after a minute of whistling and asking for a reply, if a minute, people get bored and they move on to the next thing. And who knows, who's to say that 6 or 7 minutes after they've left the room, they don't get a whistle. But they're not there to hear it because they've got bored, they've moved on.
Yeah.
So it goes to show that you have to persist. Sometimes you have to sit in a room for an hour in silence, nothing going on, just asking. If you don't get anything after 10 minutes, keep trying.
Yeah.
You can't just give up, get bored, and move on.
Indeed, and it brings out the fact that if we concentrate too much, you have to be wary of hearing things that you want to hear just because your subconscious is looking for it.
Yeah, I get that.
And I think there's the way of looking and really strongly focusing on a black corner or an area of the room and hoping to see something, show yourselves to us. On one occasion, I was a guest at an investigation at the Skirrid Inn down near Abergavenny.
Oh, yeah.
And the team that were hosting that night, at first I was a little taken aback because some of the members were having a vigil in one of the rooms, but they were sat there with the sound off, playing computer games in their hands, handheld ones.
Okay, yeah.
Well, we're here to looking for ghost hunts. No, their philosophy was, instead of actively looking at that corner and listening at that corridor for sounds, by concentrating on something else, you heighten your other senses a little bit, and they felt that they were likely to hear sounds more from not concentrating 100% on that corridor, for example.
That's fascinating.
Interesting way of doing it.
Yeah, because we always say, don't we, that if you're there, like, come on, you never get anything. But the second you start talking about Coronation Street last night or the football match, you'll start to see things out the corner of your eye, or you'll get a bang. It's almost as if it wants your attention back.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't like the fact you're not paying it attention. Very interesting.
I'll tie into that is the house that we live in is haunted.
Okay, yeah.
And there's apparently it used to be an old recuperation hospital after World War II, and various mediums independently have come along and said it's an old man, and he resides in the house, and he not so much he lurks, but he passes through the downstairs hallway and up the stairs as well, and into the two of the bedrooms, probably from the layout of the house as it would have been back in the late 1940s. When we have social get-togethers, we'll play television, put some music on, people have often said, who's that in the hallway? And there's nobody there. But it's believed that this gentleman comes and listens and enjoys the conversation that goes on.
Okay.
When we're not ghost hunting. I myself have seen a full silhouette apparition of him just recently, unexpectedly so. And yes, he was there. But also when I sat in the house by myself, my partner has recollected the same when she's been home alone. Noises from on the stairs and upstairs, and finding some items moved when neither of us have touched them.
Okay. But so he doesn't really interfere. He doesn't
interfere.
He doesn't come and intrude upon the party. He just lingers on the periphery.
It's as though he lets us know that he's there.
Yeah.
But nothing scary at all. He's a very pleasant gentleman on that plane.
Okay. So just going back to, because I'm very big on this kind of, people come along and if after 10 minutes someone hasn't been possessed and something hasn't fallen off the table and it ain't all kicking off, they're bored and they want to leave. I mean, we've actually had guests say, this is boring, can I leave? Yeah. What do you think's started that? What is there something that's happened in the investigative world that's made people like that?
In the 1998 to 2000 era, it was probably the only time that, dare I say, the most haunted factor was good.
Yeah.
When it first set out, introduced to society, this is what we do. It was believable. It was credible. Unfortunately, not by my own experience and observations, but by many over the years, and some things that you hear from other people who have watched the programme and their perceptions, and lots of people together can't all be wrong, feel that it's become more fake, setting things up to as if things are going to happen. You're never going to get a whole night or an event full of activity.
Yeah.
But also, I do think that back then, the team I was with, we were able to get venues very easily and very cheaply.
Yeah.
Money talks.
Yeah.
After the most haunted explosion into television entertainment and the likes perhaps of the American side, Ghost Hunters.
Well, yeah, Ghost
things like
Hunters,
that.
Ghost Adventures.
All of a sudden, locations realised that they could charge humongous amounts of money for investigations to take place, which is great on a business front. For the small team that doesn't have much income, it sort of rules out your ability to do focus specific based paranormal investigations.
Yeah.
It seems to have morphed over the last 10, 20 years into events more so, and fright nights.
That's where people dress up. And...
Dress up, jumping out, or you go along and people tell you what, if you go into this area or that area of the location, this is what happened there, this is what you might find.
Yeah, and they're subconsciously planting.
Yeah, if you're doing
things
that,
into your
then
head.
you're going in there thinking that you're going to hear things.
Yeah, yeah, and so you do.
You do.
And a lot of these teams will have on-site mediums with them, and they tell you how to feel. They tell you there's a man stood by you, and they guide you through the night basically, and they ensure that you've had a damn good time for the £70 you've spent.
Which is nothing wrong with it on that particular frame of looking at things if people know that that's what they're going in for.
But they don't, unfortunately. They believe it and they fall for it hook, line and sinker.
Yeah,
they pay that £70 again and again and again.
And I very strongly believe that there is a divide between an event and a paranormal investigation.
Yeah, yeah. I've called it I know you call it the most haunted effect. I've dubbed it the entertainment industry and the research industry, and they've completely split off. And the people that come on our hunts and they say, oh, bored, nothing's happened. They're the kind of the babies that were born of the entertainment industry, because they watch a 40-minute full packed episode of Most Haunted where there's possessions, there's buckets being kicked over, there's stones being thrown, there's growls, and that's not what it's like at all.
I have been on investigations where there's been something going on all night. Started about 10 or 11 o'clock, 7 a.m. in the morning. Still activity plainly there. Spirits still wanted to cooperate.
Yeah.
They wanted to tolerate us and still interact at that time. Other occasions, been in absolutely nothing all night. And on the odd other occasion, absolutely nothing, half an hour of activity, then dead again.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing we find is that it's normally as we're packing up, just as we're getting ready to leave, and it might have been a mediocre night, just as we're getting ready to leave, it all kicks off, and you start to get a peak in activity. Mm-hmm. But you can't stay. If it's a place you've paid to go and visit, there's normally set times that you have to be out of the building by for insurance purposes and stuff, and you reluctantly have to pack up and leave, knowing that if you stay, you might get that piece of evidence that you crave.
Yeah.
I think the problem is with the most haunted effect is it's had a knock-on effect onto teams, and what I call the corporation teams, and there's 3 or 4 of them now, franchises that operate across the UK. Mm-hmm. I'm sure America have got their own versions, and they charge through the nose for guests to go on investigations, and that's how they can afford to pay these expensive prices for the locations. And it's a catch-22. It's a circle. It's a never-ending. Locations charge a lot of money, teams have to charge the guests a lot of money. The more they charge, the more they make, the more locations realise they can charge, and it just keeps going round. And it's becoming a very expensive hobby, and it's forcing guys like us kind of out of the field. And we're having to focus on things like graveyards and people's houses and locations that will let us go for free, because we just can't afford to go to these places anymore.
It's who you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the same in all walks of life. I mean, the story I always tell is I got married in a house. I asked if they did ghost hunts. They said no, we would never consider that kind of thing. And I was very upset because it looked like a great house. About 3 weeks after my honeymoon, I turned the telly on to see Yvette Fielding running around that house. Turns out they chucked £1,000 at them. Who can turn that down? And lo and behold, they got to investigate. So, they stood by their morals. But as soon as they had £1,000 thrown at them, it was, come and investigate. And that right there is the problem that we're dealing with. And I know it happened down Drakelow, and it's kind of, again, forced us out of there because we just can't afford it anymore.
Yeah. Another sad negative I found, particularly back in the early 2000s, was, how have I been thinking about it, this paranormal rivalry against other teams, almost like gang warfare, for want of a better description.
Yeah.
This is our patch.
Yeah.
And the lady and her partner who ran the initial team I was with would get very irate and put out if another team were heard to be investigating somewhere that they considered on their manor. Wow. And I think it's just, we're all here for the common goal.
Yeah, yeah. I think something I've come across a lot, and I know you have, is people that gather evidence, good evidence, to the observer, obviously, but then they won't share it. It stays on their phone, it stays on an SD card or on their laptop, and no one can get a look in at it. And I think, well, what are you doing it for then? You know, if you find evidence, share it. Let somebody else come with you. You know, let someone else come and investigate because they might find something you haven't, and there's no harm in that.
Yeah, if we're all here for the common goal, let's prove it.
Yeah.
Let's prove it to the world.
Yeah.
And the disbelievers out there, let's try and see if we can change their minds.
Yeah.
Or at least their outlook. We don't want to convince them to say, you don't believe in ghosts. We don't want them to turn around and say, oh, yes, we do now.
Yeah.
I'd like a complete sceptic who doesn't believe to turn around to me and say, maybe you've got something.
Yeah, you've got something.
We can't prove it, but there's something in there.
Yeah. But I mean, it happened. The gang warfare analogy you've used there is fantastic because that's what it's like. You know, it's the word I hear a lot is exclusivity, and it's, you know, this is exclusively our location. You can only go on this come to this location if you go through this team.
Yeah.
And I noticed that there's a lot of people that we used to investigate with, and the only way they can get into these locations is by paying the price and going with another team, because there's no way that their team would ever get into that location. Because, you know, it's not, I imagine they sign contracts to, you know, with that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought as to why and how. Is it exclusive to only one team who perhaps only work in one way? And maybe the spirits that reside in any particular location, they don't work with one system.
Yeah.
So another team could go in and get lots more information with a variation on how you work.
And that's nothing against the original team. If people have just different ways of working, you know, 2 + 2 is 4, but so is 3 + 1. And it doesn't matter how you do it, it's the end result.
Take a group of living people in this world, a group of other people come into the same room as them, they may not get on.
Yeah.
A different group of other people come in, they may well interact a lot better. I think there's no difference between our world and the spirit world in that way.
Okay, yeah. So you mentioned there about how one team works and how another team works. So we all use equipment and we all use different gadgets that, again, the prices of which are going through the roof because they know they can market it so well. But what kind of equipment do you like to use? What kind of equipment do you think is negative for the investigative field? And what kind of evidence have you got with these pieces of equipment?
Well, I'm extremely open-minded myself, and my first pair of paranormal tools that I've got is my eyes and my ears.
Yep.
The things I was
very well said.
Very well born with. They're my first tools because they're the main ones we use, whatever equipment we have. I, myself, very old school, if that's the right word to use.
I know what you mean, though.
Some things like there's the calling out, listening vigils.
Yep.
Show us where you are. If you're here, give us a noise,
yep.
give us a sound. Seances.
Yep.
I think collectively a group of people with the hands touching, although it's very much portrayed in comedy television as a bit of a joke.
It's a cliche,
it's
isn't it?
Still very strong when you get the physical energies going and the psychic energies going between a group of people. A very contentious one is the glass or the planchette on a board or a table.
Okay, so the board you're referring to as a spirit board?
I call it a spirit board because you call it a spirit board, you think of it in a more positive light.
Ouija board has been hijacked by Hollywood and horror
Hollywood,
films.
the media,
Yeah.
and given it quite definitely, perhaps in the 60s and 70s, the reputation of drunken students summoning demons in the middle of the night, and not opening and closing these things properly as a means of psychic protection.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And yet you try and sell the idea that it's just a portal, a door that you open to try and either get you either get a look through into the paranormal, the spirit world, or they quite kindly come and bless us with their presence. The photography and sound, very much a difficult one in the modern world with the digital age. Very easy to doctor digital photography, and that's why my camcorder that I use is analog,
right,
and little tape.
Yeah.
So anything that comes up on there with night vision, it's just going to pick up anything that happens. It's less likely to be faked because I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to do it even with the know-how. There's probably people out there that can do it, but the big argument about orbs, digital photography, is it dust? Is it camera? Is it flash flare? Lens flare? All those things. Difficult to say what's going on, and it would be great to take a picture without a flash and pick something up.
Yeah.
And there is a fascination with must have flash photography, take photographs in the dark.
Yeah.
There are times when you get things that, what the hell was that? Our most recent investigation, taking the same shot several times, and not just one speck, but that huge white, what could have been an entity to the left of the camera, without moving the shot.
No.
And yet taking the same shot several times within a minute, surely the white mass would have been there.
Yeah.
And there was nothing whatsoever to reflect the light or anything down there. And that's one that we put down to unexplainable.
I remember this because I thought, could it be fog? Could it be breath? Because it was a cold night. So I did a follow-up photo. And for you guys listening, I'll try and remember to put these photos up so you can see what we're talking about. But I did a follow-up one with breath. And compared the two, and the breath was really opaque, was like a mist, you could see through it. But this thing that you had coming in from the left frame was solid. You can't see through it. It's
even
solid.
Put my fingers in front of the camera, and completely different photograph. Nothing like
it. And we couldn't recreate this photo, guys. It was very weird. So hopefully I'll remember to put it up, and you can think about that yourselves.
I'm also an advocate of trigger objects.
Yes, you love a Winnie the Pooh is one of your favourites, isn't it?
About 4 or 5 inches tall he is. But a lot of people's eyes light up, sometimes in amazement and sometimes in were you drunk at the time response. We set this up in a little room within a church environment and locked the door for a period of an hour. No other way in or out of the room. I myself had the key. And I stayed with other people, so I couldn't sneak off and move it. But when we went back to that room, the bear had moved from one little chair onto the one next to it at right angles to it.
Wow.
We do not know how or when during that hour. But it's just one of those things that I look and think, there's nobody in there, nobody could have moved it, that is on this physical plane.
You also have a toy car. That we'll take around.
But that... A lot of it comes from my own experience over the years of mainly picking up on child spirits.
Yeah.
But I think even adult spirits from centuries gone by would be fascinated by what's this little thing with wheels on.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And that's interesting, actually, because so many times we shout at these spirits, come and show yourself to the camera, come and make the K2 meter light up. And if these guys were born, 70 years ago, or for a camera a couple of 100 years ago, they wouldn't have a clue what you're talking about. You're naming all these gadgets. They don't know what they are. They don't know how they work. Some of these guys weren't around when electricity was around. So you always have to remember that when you're trying to communicate with them. To talk to them in the most, not in a derogatory way, but talk to them really simply. Explain what it is you want very clearly, because you just don't know who it is you're talking to.
And it's a bit like in a care environment, looking after elderly people, the language that you use and terminology should be what they would have used.
Yeah.
Not the very polite, very nice, how do you like to go? to the shops, Mister So and So. It might be something more cruder than that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But that's how that gets straight through to them. So equally, if you're speaking to spirits that are not of our generation and their last century or century before, try and think of how would we word something to them in language that they would understand.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we have guys on spirit boards where we'll ask them to spell the name, and we don't get anything, or the glass might just move around randomly. You could be talking to a child who never knew how to spell their name.
Yeah.
You could be talking to someone who was illiterate a couple of 100 years ago, don't know how to spell their name. So always some things that you have to remember. And you talk about communicating with them on their level. We did that investigation in Drakelow where we caught that fantastic red orb that came dancing around us, and it was because we were playing the 1940s
moving
violin
intelligently,
music.
not just.
That was a fantastic video. Again, I'll try and remember to put this up, guys.
On the plane of language, of course, the one thing that you often see mentioned on the internet is a bit of a little funny picture, but if you're going abroad and you're investigating abroad, Transylvania, I think it was, go over there trying to look for ghosts and spirits, talk to them in English.
Yeah.
How does that work, guys? It's a little bit sort of a smug grin on that. And being on television, that really, really was one thing that makes people think, how's this going to work? So people are either brainwashed into it and believe that's great.
Yeah.
How's this person going to understand what you're saying? If they did, they wouldn't have spoken English back then.
Well, there was the show called Ghost Hunters International, which was the American offshoot of guys that used to go around Europe, and they'd come to England. And they would regularly go to places like Transylvania and all these places and talk in English, or, in an American English, which is even harder to understand sometimes. And they would get responses. And you think, if you're talking to like a 16th century Polish nobleman or something, how's he going to understand what you're saying? But they get the answers every time. Okay.
And apart from my trusty digital recorder, the infrared beam.
Okay, yeah.
Important to set that up, of course, in the right place, the right way. Because if you put it on the ground, a rodent or something could go past it.
And is this you're talking about the motion sensor camera here?
No, not the motion sensor camera. You set it up either side of a walkway where people would possibly pass through.
Yeah.
And important to try and get it off the ground 5 or 6 inches. So if a mouse or a rat does go past, it's not going to set it off.
Yeah.
But if the beam gets broken, even with a slight refraction of it, which a spirit may do if it goes through the beam, it will fire away.
Yeah.
And we set that in areas where people wouldn't
often go. And have you ever had any? I mean, we've done it, but
only on occasion I've had it happen, and that was at the Crooked House at Himley.
You got to investigate the Crooked House?
Yes, we did that a long, long time ago.
Wow. Okay. For the guys that don't know this place, it's a local pub, and it's built very, as the name suggests, crookedly. It's an awfully built building, and weirdly, you can put a marble on a table and it will roll upwards because of the way the building is built.
It's because of the subsidence due to the mining that used to be underneath it.
But it's a very interesting place. I didn't know they did paranormal. Well, I guess they don't know.
Long time ago. I think we mentioned earlier about you can go to investigations where you'll only get a 10 or 20 minute window of activity.
Yeah.
And that was one such place.
And you got this motion sensor?
That was one of the things. But
yeah.
We took lots of photographs. About 10 people that night, all taking photographs in different areas, and nothing on any of the things at all until it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and half an hour of lots of things coming up on the cameras, lots of different things on the pictures, and then suddenly everybody's camera shut down at the same time.
Batteries ran out, or
no, because after about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, everybody's cameras suddenly started working again.
So it wasn't one at a time. It was kind of instantaneous, collectively.
Very much off
wow.
that, and that was an interesting experience to see. But after that, it just went flat.
Yeah.
That experience where you know that it's as if they've all gone home. Nobody wants anything to do with us again.
And when you talk about like it's gone flat and do you find that you pick up a lot? Obviously, you've said you have these feelings, these senses. Do you walk into a location at the start of an investigation and think this is going to be good or this is going to be quiet, And does that often come true?
Not personally. I like to get to places early. I like to attune to an environment and just have a little bit of a focus and develop my own psychic protection ready for when the official investigation starts. I'm not like lucky enough to be a person who can walk in and think there's a gentleman named Bill that sits in the corner over there. I'll go in and I'll have a little sit and a ponder. I will be drawn to particular areas sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's not always quick and it's not always immediate when we start the investigation. I find that sometimes when I really sit in a lone vigil or with 2 or 3 other people, that's when my sensitivity and receptivity seems to be at its max.
Okay. So what would you say is the highlight of your investigative career? What was the most, something's happened and it scared you or it's made you think that's it?
No, most interesting was it was a pub location where a young boy was reputed to have been killed, butchered by his brother.
Wow.
In the early 20th century.
Okay.
And we'd been invited to investigate this location by the then landlady, who knew it was haunted. She reported that there were numerous times that she would see the spirit of this young boy in the upper accommodation areas. We'd gone up as a team and done a board, and we had knocks and sounds and various sounds on command, and everybody in the building was there in that room. It's possible that some people could have been knocking walls.
Yeah.
But having checked around that nobody was near a wall, I thought, okay, maybe there's something in that. I felt a very strong spirit presence myself. When they went off to do other parts of the building, I decided to stay in the room, give a bit of calling out. And I went and stood by the window, having checked that there was no breezes, no nothing coming in or anything. I can't remember the lad's name, but stood by the window and said, okay, we've had communication with us, which we thank you for, really great. Can you now come and make me understand where you are in this room? Just arms out either side of me, not touching anything, by the window, having made sure no drafts coming in, even all the way across. Can you come and stand by me? And all of a sudden, the arm went icy cold from my right arm, from tip of my fingers to my just up over my elbow.
Okay.
On the right hand side. I was okay with that. Felt okay. Well, this is what I've asked for, so what I've got. Didn't run and scream like I was haunted.
Yeah.
I thought, thank you for that. I understand you're here now. You know we're not hearing any. Please take it off me now. And it's just like it drained away down to my hand and out.
Okay.
Of me again, and that was a really strong experience where I really felt that young lad's spirit was present.
But that comes back to what I keep saying, how it's becoming a more and more personal experience. With all these gadgets, and gadgets can always go wrong. You could have a faulty battery. It could be affected by EMF or your mobile phone and stuff like that. But when you have an experience like that, you might have people that don't believe you. That's absolutely fine.
I'm sure the parapsychologist would say, you wanted it to happen.
You want it to happen, you've manifested it yourself.
I did not specify an arm.
Yeah.
And it went so cold.
Yeah.
It's not the sort of thing I wanted to think about.
Yeah.
But there will always be somebody who
will say, but it's personal.
Depths of your mind. That's
but it's personal. And the thing is, people that say they've had a personal experience and they haven't, then that's fine. They have to live with that. They have to go to bed knowing they've lied to themselves. But when you have had a personal experience, it makes it so unique, and to me, that's what investigating is all about. And all these gadgets and overpriced equipment that we use is nothing compared to when you actually have a personal experience.
A couple of things that come out of what we've spoken as well. You mentioned about possible equipment that I wouldn't personally go for. In this modern day and age, trying to get people to turn their mobiles to turn them off is one thing.
Yeah.
But also digital watches and things that get out.
Smart watches, yeah.
The idea of there may be something in it. I personally don't feel that it's relevant given those forces in a paranormal environment of the copper rope.
The copper rope.
Yes.
Okay.
Because
So do you want to explain what that is
copper,
for the guys that probably don't know? What is a copper rope experiment?
The group standing in a, as far as I know, I've never taken part in it. I've only observed it.
Okay.
Standing in a circle, copper rope in hand, going all the way around, and I believe it's about feeling the energies.
Yeah, so from what I understood, it was copper is next to silver, because actually gold isn't that conductive compared to copper and silver. It's the most conductive compared to silver, and who can afford silver?
Yeah.
So they stand with holding a copper rope, and it's supposed to conduct the energy. And it goes back to ancient tribal people who would encircle their camp with a copper wire to keep the bad spirits out and the good spirits in, and all that stuff. So it's not a modern thing. It goes back ages. People wear copper bracelets to conduct bad health.
But as far as paranormal things go, if you take readings around that, who's to know it's not affected by bits of activity?
Yeah, but that's the same as K2 meters. If you keep your mobile phone, you might think you've got activity. Someone's gone, yeah, my mobile phone's off. It's not. They've lied to you, and you think you're getting activity, but you're not. The copper rope is. I mean, I've experienced people doing the copper rope, and they all kind of bunch together and group together, and that's been cited as because of the copper rope conducting energy. But then it could also be the fact that you've got 5 or 6 people, guests most of the time, stood in a dark room who are a little bit scared. And what's the natural thing to do when you're scared? You want to move closer to someone. You want safety in numbers. So of course they're going to group together. They're going to move closer together because they feel safer. That's probably the more explainable reason for the copper rope. Okay.
And you mentioned just about what equipment do we use, and that's going to change as per each investigation we do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You mentioned about going to bed. If we do private investigations, it's important to do what the hosts want you to do, not just come in and say, this is what we're going to do. The biggest one being, do you want us to use a board or not?
Yeah.
People don't.
I think that's the most divisive piece of equipment.
Very much so. Yeah. And we have to respect the wishes of them, because they're the people, after we've gone and hopefully raised some spirits, communicated with them.
Sent them back.
Settle them back, and people don't want to go to bed with the residue of anything that particularly if something that isn't quite too pleasant comes forward out of the blue unexpectedly. Yeah, we don't want to leave the people who have got to live there in fear of whatever we may have raised.
Yeah. Well, I often have people say to me, "Oh, my house is haunted," or "I have stuff at my house," and I say, "Oh, well, if you're happy enough, then let me know and we'll come round and have a look." The first thing they say is, "Oh no, I don't want you raising any demons," and stuff like that. And I often say to them, "No, look, we respect what you want. We do what you want. We don't kind of overstep the mark. We use protection. We open and close things properly. The idea being that you're not left with any residue. And even then, there's still a bit. And put it this way: out of, let's say, every 10 people that tell me about it, I might get to go to one person's house and investigate, because that's the nature of the beast. Hollywood, things like that, making them feel that it's all about demons, and it could just be their nan who's checking in to see if they're okay, or something, or your gentleman who just likes to nosy in on a conversation or two. So okay,
perhaps on a personal note, all of this I've been comparing with, because having used to work as a mental health nurse, as a professional, dealing with people with psychosis and people who were allegedly paranoid and hearing voices.
Yeah.
And understanding the paranormal in the way I do now, or what I believe the paranormal to be, and having heard things myself, and whether I've heard things audially or media or psychically, you do tend to hear voices sometimes, and I believe that can happen. So I have on occasions, when I was working, found myself thinking, when somebody was describing voices they're hearing, maybe you are. Particularly if it's the voice of a relative or something who's died, etc. And I had a psychiatrist sitting next to me thinking that the person is raving mad.
Yeah.
And that was a hard thing at the time, to separate my
professional
belief from the professional responsibility.
But didn't I don't know too much about this side of things, but I'm sure the NHS at some point actually said that was a possibility. Did they? Am I making that up?
I'm not aware of it.
Did they not come out? Did they write a paper, or did they do something?
There will have been something out there as a parapsychological approach,
I'm sure
does it really happen? Does it not?
Yeah.
But it did produce a rather unique paradigm to me at first, as to a clash of personal thoughts on it, until I was able to put each of them, or keep each of them neatly in their own niche where they needed to be.
Yeah.
And I couldn't let them pass because of my professional responsibilities.
And unfortunately, you've done the right thing there, but it's a shame because that we need to be doing that kind of thing. You know, you can't just be saying, "Oh, he's a nutter because he's hearing voices in his head." It could be a spirit, it could be paranormal, but because that isn't accepted in modern society,
and we cannot prove it,
he's locked in a padded room and
the medical
fed
model
medication.
overrules everything.
And that's such a shame.
But that was an interesting slant on my life and professional working life as a result of this interest I've got in the paranormal.
Okay, so now, I mean, just kind of drawing this to a close, you're not really part of a team anymore. We go out and we investigate as and when we feel like it and getting together. What's your plans for the future? What's your plans for going forward in the investigative world?
I think just casually go ahead with it, as we've been doing on and off. When the opportunities arise, because it remains a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not into the idea of making big money or large, huge events.
Yeah.
Having been to huge events where it's been overkill, you really cannot do a proper investigation. I like the idea of small numbers working towards the common goal of trying to, is there a life after an afterlife? Is there not? What, if so, how much evidence can we propose, and how much can we actually, what we're looking to do is disprove our own beliefs almost.
Yeah.
In a strange reverse paradigm.
Yeah.
We're looking at this we're going out there to do this, hoping to find something. And really, are we looking to disprove it or prove it to ourselves?
Yeah.
Schrodinger's ghost hunt.
Yeah, that's fascinating because I say, I always go with the intention of disproving ghosts. Because if you go to prove ghosts, you will.
Yeah.
Every noise you hear will be a ghost. Every shadow you see is a ghost. If you go to disprove ghosts, you have this logical kind of checklist that you tick off.
Yeah.
You heard a noise, well, it could be this, it could be this.
What is it not? And anything that's left
it might
well be.
But even then you don't know. But if you go in thinking, it's a ghost, and that's the whole point of the word investigation. Because if you go in going, it's a ghost, that's a ghost, that's a ghost, that's not investigating. Mm-hmm. You're just confirming your own beliefs, and there's no investigating that.
But my final note really is based on that you mentioned about the 1940s music we played in the Draco Tunnels complex. People think of ghost hunters as sitting in the quiet. Is there anybody there listening and giving a silence? When indeed we've had some very strong activities from playing music, loud, raucous, with spirit potentially feeding off the energy that builds up.
Yeah, and of course we've had things where we've laughed, we've raised the energy, we're joking, we're bantering with each other, sharing a bit of patter, and that kind of raises the levels really, and that always results in some kind of activity, I've found. Okay, so over to you, last word before we sign off. Have you got anything else you want to say, anything you want to kind of throw out there?
Only to say to people, don't be afraid of doing it. If you've got interest, go off on an event, go on a small activity, and don't be frightened of doing it, and don't just do it in the daytime and at night time.
Yeah, of course, ghosts don't only come out at night.
Ghosts don't come out at night. Really, the only reason we go ghost hunting at night is that our connection with our senses is a lot more heightened by doing it in the dark than in the day.
And we work in the day.
Not because ghosts work a night shift.
Yeah. But of course we work a day shift as well, which means we can't do a lot in the day. But you're right, when the lights are off, you can't see anything, you rely on your hearing, you rely on your sense of touch, your smell even, and that heightens.
But long live the hobby.
Long live the hobby. It's in danger at the moment, as we've discussed. But do long live the hobby indeed. Thank you very much, Les. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Coming over. It's been a pleasure. We'll look at getting you on again in the future, and we can talk about some more investigations that we've done between now and then. But yeah, thank you very much.
Love to. Thank you.
So that was the interview with my good friend Les Champion. Very, very interesting. Interesting to see how he has a lot of the same kind of beliefs that I have and values and opinions, and that's not, he's not saying that because I've said it and vice versa. One of the reasons we get on so well is because we have, similar opinions and kind of similar ways of looking at how to investigate the paranormal field. He feels just as strongly about what he calls the most haunted effect than I do. And I call it um, the entertainment industry. So it's the same thing with a different name, really, but we both feel very strongly about it. And it is having an effect on the paranormal investigative world. It is affecting it in a negative way. With these big groups that are going around, and which we've mentioned before. But yeah, hopefully you got a sense there of Leslie's experience and Leslie's kind of love for the field. And we're going to be investigating a lot more together going forward. We've done a few, obviously. Well, over the years we've done many. But lately we've had a new tact, and as Les alluded to there, we're just going to do it as and when the mood takes us. When we can find the location, if the weather's nice, we'll go and do an outside event. If the weather's not so nice, we'll see where we can get inside. One of the good things about doing this, and me getting my name out there, so to speak, is that we're getting a lot of people contact us, to go and investigate their house, or even their place of work. We've been to hairdressers and factories and other places. So ghosts are everywhere. They're not just they're not just kind of residing in old buildings waiting for you to go there, or they're not just in the most expensive of venues to investigate. They are everywhere. So it's always good to go actually and investigate a place that doesn't look haunted or is off the beaten track, shall we say. It's not visited by hundreds and hundreds of ghost hunters every single week. It's always good to get away from those places and start to investigate. Um, Not new places, but places that aren't as high profile as the other places that quite commonly get investigated. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that with Les. And our next guest, I'm not sure it's going to be yet. As always, I have a couple of people lined up, so we'll be ironing that out probably over the next week or so, and sorting out a date to kind of interview them. There was someone lined up that I would like to talk to that discusses near death experiences, and that's always been an interest of mine. Because one thing we always say is we don't know if ghosts are real or not because we've never died. And people that have had near death experiences or have in fact died and come back, they're probably the only people that can tell us what's on the other side or what it's like to kind of pass over. So it's always been a fascination of mine, because they're probably the people that are closest to being able to tell it how it is, really. So yeah, as always, thank you very much for listening, for tuning in, for taking the time out of your day to listen to us. Really, thank you for subscribing. Please feel free to share us around, share us on Facebook, tell your friends and your family about it, and we'll keep growing these ever increasing listening figures. And who knows where we'll be in a year or two if we keep going. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. Have a nice rest of the day or whatever it is you're doing. Take care, and we'll speak to you very soon.